So yeah, hi, thanks for coming everyone. My name's Owen Hayman. I'm Horticulture Innovation Manager at the Green Estate and Pictorial Meadows. Thank you, Ros, for that introduction. So I'm hoping that I'm going to tell you a bit about the history of Green Estate and Pictorial Meadows and our relationship with the university. It's a lot of history. I've only been here for 3 years, so this is a lot of history that I've been digging into, talking to people that we work with. And again today, talking to James already, asking questions about really how did things go, what is the history. I've been doing a deep dive on the PowerPoint presentations that we have that go back to back to 2004. So look for pictures. And also doing a bit of a deep dive on people's LinkedIn accounts, because I've been really interested to see all these different people and players in Sheffield and beyond, all these designers and landscape managers and gardeners, seeing how many of those came through the department and seeing that ripple effect and those people who went out into the world and all the things that they did and how all these things keep coming back to each other. So it's been quite interesting preparing for this. So a little bit of the history. So the Green Estate started in 1998 as a heritage and environment project. It was a partnership between the Sheffield and Rotherham Wildlife Trust and the Manor and Castle Development Trust. And the Manor Estate had been called the worst estate in Britain, and it was an area of multiple deprivation, a lot of social issues, environmental issues, economic issues. And that site there with the burnt out cars, I think, Peter, how many burnt out cars was there in a year that was pulled out? Can you remember? 130 burnt out cars in just 1 year that were pulled out. And this was on Manor Fields Park. And then over time, we had the cleared sites contract, which I'll tell you a bit about. This is old social housing land. And then Manor Fields Park was turned into a really green and beautiful place as we know it today. And those of you that came on the tour, a lot of that is about what we call the urban common. So it's this native, non-native mix, this huge diversity of habitats and a mosaic of different management types. And that's kind of seen here as the Lupinus polyphilus, a North American lupin that in some contexts may be seen as invasive, but in the park we see it as just enhancing biodiversity. And then community as well has always been part of it. So engaging with local people, young people. This was demolishing very derelict allotment sites that are now part of Manor Fields Park, working with people building the stone features that those of you who came on the tour saw, those beautiful stone features that are all the way through the park. And we said one of the benefits of stone is people can't set light to it, which is helpful. And then some of those early SuDS features that we'll tell you about becoming fishing lakes. So all these different ways that we're working with the local environment to help bring about that social regeneration as well as environmental. And that economic regeneration. So this is the building that we're in today. So that just in there, this is a relatively modern extension, and that's the old farmhouse. And that was it there, surrounded by Japanese knotweed and completely derelict. And there was a few people even squatting in there. And the bungalows were built just at the back here to home the people who were squatting. And now those are our offices, and those people have moved on. So a beautiful office that we've got. This is just a little picture that I found early in some of these really old presentations. These are some of our early plans for the site and different ideas that they were juggling. Someone told me recently that they even experimented with making paper out of Japanese knotweed. So there is all these different ideas that have been trialled over the years. And this is before Pictorial Meadows came about. And that's obviously one of our key income generators now. But looking into it, there was an area for wildflower meadow and they had wildflower crops. So there was ideas about collecting seed. There's even an area, this is what we call the arena, where we walked through on the tour today, which is now a nice big open space with meadows around the edge. That had arable crops that were being grown on there. So there's all these different ideas that have come through the site over the years. And down this is Pictorial Meadows HQ, where a lot of us are based, and the trials and production fields are down there. That was put as maybe having an equestrian centre. So yeah, there's all these different ideas that they went through over the years. And then in 2003, Green Estate bought the majority share of Pictorial Meadows from Professor Nigel Dunnett. And Sue France was our CEO from 1999, right from the start, through to 2022. So just a few years ago that she left. And my understanding is, Nigel, maybe you can correct me, was this the original catalogue picture?
Yeah, it's just on my laptop at home.
There you go.
Little catalogue, the first one.
Yeah, it's a beautiful little catalogue. First catalogue, as we say, we often say it was a kitchen table business, how it started. And And then kind of continuing then with the development of it and the seed collection and seed harvesting and mixing and different products as well. So some of the key sites. So I'll tell you a bit about Sue France. So I emailed Sue France. She unfortunately couldn't be here today, and I emailed her and said, tell me, about the early history. And really, she just said that the cleared sites was one of the really important parts to the story. It was really important to be able to demonstrate on this huge landscape scale what you can do with seed. So these are some of the cleared sites, and they're kind of derelict industrial land or social housing that had been demolished to be rebuilt. So this is prefab social housing areas. And then seeding these with really colourful annuals. And this was this approach that Nigel had developed. And then we had all this huge site. So 200 hectares across the whole city, that is roughly, I think it's about 2% of the entire city's land area. So that's a really large area to play with. And the idea behind seeding it was to reduce antisocial behaviour, increase biodiversity, make it a more beautiful place during this period of transition. So the kind of meanwhile landscapes. And getting local kids involved. And this is Big Lad. Everyone who's been at Green Estate for years is really passionate about Big Lad. This big heavy horse that would be come in to help lightly cultivate the ground for sowing the seeds. And there's Big Lad again in the background after it's been cultivated. And the kids here think that they're sowing seed, but actually they've just been given sand on its own with no seed in it. So I hope no one here, was that kid back then. But yeah, it's, because, I think that they'd maybe learnt the hard way, giving them the seeds and noticing, it's just all there and there and there and nothing the rest of it. But yeah, no, it was engaging. They enjoyed it. And then, just loads of this crazy, burying of asbestos. Really what they cleaned up it's astounding the work that they did over the years. And this is a really early photo with this amazing seeding machine, which again, I don't know huge amounts about. But these are some of the kind of really early photos of these initial seeding projects. And then, some of the lovely impact and really engaging. And Nigel recently talked we had the Society of Garden and Landscape Designers conference here in Sheffield, and Nigel gave an amazing talk there, really talking about how people respond to these types of meadows and what that emotional response is, and how much that means for community cohesion and how people feel in an area and how they feel about their space. So they're very transformative. And this is one of our favourite pictures. We call this Picking Flowers for Mum. So here's the kid and he's got some lovely flowers that he's going to hopefully take home. And then moving on with the continued development then of Pictorial Meadows and looking at perennials as well. So these are some an early photo with, I can see James is getting like, oh, what's going on here? So this is actually Dan Cornwell. He's currently is our head of director of commercial landscapes. So he's been here many, many years. And then Helen, again, these both are ex-students, former students of the landscape department. They did the masters in landscape architecture. Helen McNally, she's our head of commercial landscapes. So I share an office with these guys. They've been here many years, and as I say, they came through. Helen did her master's project looking at South African plants on green roofs. So it's really ingrained, all this kind of learning and teaching, and then putting it into practice as well. And then a huge amount of research, which I'm sure some of you will be aware of, this huge range of research, and it covers, I'm sure we'll touch a bit upon it and you'll see it in the book. It spans everything from the technical, the nitty gritty about, weeds and competition between species and individual species selection, through to the more social side and understanding, the political landscape and how do we work with local authorities and what are the challenges of working with different types of communities? How do we get more meadow-like vegetation into urban areas? And then, of course, the more personal, social, psychological side of things as well. How do people perceive flowers and colour and biodiversity, and what actually is pleasing to diverse audiences? And a lot of this research, some of it was, them using our land, but then also our projects as well, feeding back to them. So I talked a bit today on the tour saying it's actually sometimes quite hard to tell where one finished and the other met, if you know what I mean. It's quite a kind of tangled web of all sorts of different interactions and people working with each other and taking inspiration. But yeah,
Yeah, and Owen, can I just say that those two pieces of research were done in Luton for those people who are on the tour this afternoon. So the Bedfordshire stuff that was talking about. So
Great, yeah. So those done in Luton are the ones on the social side and political.
the other one in Bedford.
Great. And then trials ongoing again. Those of you who are on the tour will have seen a bit of this today. So this is the Western Chinese herbaceous flora trial that was done, looking at 3 different canopy structures and looking at how the canopies work together. So this is on our site. We've got loads of space, and as James mentioned today, they're in a tower block in a car park. You know, that's where the landscape department is. It doesn't have any green space immediately for them to use, and we've got all this room. So these trials have been here over the years. They've been on Manor Fields Park. They've been here just outside the door in the trials field, dotted around. And then here's Yujo. We just bumped into him at the compost heap, and there's him with Peter. And he'd taken all his dry biomass, he'd done all his fancy measurements, and you know, that he feeds into his complex mathematical model to look at the biomass of the plants. And then he came back and he just chucked it on the compost heap here at Green Estate, which is another one of our businesses. So here he was dropping off his dry biomass all at the back of his car. And there's another one. I think this was this Michael Livingston's project?
Yes, Michael Livingston, the deep gravel stuff.
Right, yeah, so this is about deep gravel mulches. And then, as some of you on the Greater Green, phase 1 has this nice 10 centimetre deep gravel mulch that really suppresses weeds. Phase 2 doesn't have that. So, and that's one of the kind of key learnings really, is about the effectiveness of deep gravel mulches. And that's why it's such a wide practice today and how effective it is. And this is where some of those early trials were done. So, and then the Green Roof Centre was really important. So this started in 1999 with Nigel, and these huge trials across the Robert Hadfield building where they had the big trial area. But then they needed someone out in the real world who could manufacture soils and work with big amounts of soils and help deploy it in installing and creating green roof projects. And a lot of these people, so Jeff Sorrell here, he then worked at Green Estate for many years, and Virginia Stovin, we're actually working with her now currently on another project to do with recycled aggregates. So this is us making some of these soils using our compost and using local reclaimed aggregates, and then going out onto these amazing projects like Sharrow School. I've been corrected, it's not Sharrowvale School, it's Sharrow School. And this is a local nature reserve. So this is one of Nigel's projects, and we helped install it, and now we've been doing the maintenance of it for many years. And again, Moorgate's Croft Business Centre, a very famous one. This is a different approach. This is planted, and this is kind of today. So all those plants have kind of found their niche. They've melted together, and they've formed that kind of community of plants with a beautiful pulsatilla. So I'll race through, but there's all this research that was done that basically showed how biodiverse roofs are better, they function better, they deliver more. And unfortunately, the green roof industry has gone down a kind of sedum road where it's the cheapest possible option, it's very light, it does very little, but ultimately it doesn't slow the flow of water as much, it's not as beautiful, it doesn't provide for biodiversity. And this is kind of manifested then in our Botanical Skyline mix. So a lot of that research that was done at the university has then found its way into services with Pictorial Meadows and Green Estate, and also products through the seed mixes. And this is one of those. So Botanical Skyline is a green roof turf. So this is about having the mixture of all the different flowering species, alpine and Mediterranean, as well as the sedums and the fine fescues. And that was what was found to be the best functional for a green roof. There's a few Botanical Skyline and us out installing it. And then in Manor Fields Park, this is this really old experiment. So this was Marion Tilecoat. So this is in really fertile, this is big rosebay willow herb and bramble. And these are plants that are planted in there. And these would have been planted over 20 years ago. So they might have been 20, 23, 24 years ago or so.
It was 20 years ago.
Yeah. And this was how they were looking just a few, two years ago. So we've got Persicaria polymorpha, that was another one that we looked at today, this huge, big, white, frothing foam, almost like a wave. And then things like Cephalaria gigantea, really nice with the rosebay willow herb. So these are these existing trials. So it's amazing for me to come and work here and see these ideas that I can read about in the book and then see them actually in real life 20 years later, how robust they are and what's lived. And all this gets is flailed every 3 years. That's all it gets. There's no weeding. It's just flailed every 3 years, which means it just gets completely chopped down to the ground and left. And this has been really inspiring for us, and we've done lots more projects now with tall herb plants in Glasgow, and we're doing a lot more around Sheffield using tall herbs in really fertile conditions. And this was kind of where it's published in this Urban Wildscapes publication, Enhancing Ruderal Perennials. And then the SuDS scheme at the top of Manor Fields Park. So this is back in 2005. So this is one of the first SuDS systems that was put into Manor Fields Park. Those of you who came on the tour, you will have seen it up near the playground where we went to the Deep Pits playground. So it comes in into these pools, weaves its way down, and then if it's not captured there, the 1 in a 100-year flood flows all the way down here and it goes into this huge events area, which is this big, flat, well-drained, totally sandy, flat area. And the people who were involved in doing this, there was Sue France, so I forgot to mention she was one of your first master's students.
One of my first 2 master's students.
Yeah, that's it. So that's it. And Sue France had previously been the head of horticulture at the Duchy College in Cornwall. So she was very knowledgeable, but she wanted a career change, and she'd come to Sheffield, and there she was. She'd done the masters and then gone and set up Green Estate. And then Zach Tudor. So in Sheffield, very famous now, one of the key designers on the Sheffield Grey to Green scheme. Now works for Arup, and he's designed lots more SuDS schemes, including Mansfield, which I'll tell you a bit about. And then Roger Noel, so he's the kind of SuDS expert at the council. And he actually, I think, studied at the department before you guys were there. But it kind of shows how they all went out into the world. And then this is what it looked like when it was being created. So these are the ponds flowing through and the Deep Pits playground with that spiral. We almost had a bit of a health and safety nightmare on that spiral today, didn't we? I led everyone up there like lemmings, and there's the play area. And then this is that kind of mosaic of different management types that you can see across the park, all these different habitat types. And then really using that investment from SuDS. So the housing developer was building houses, and then Roger Noel was able to say, hey, why don't, instead of putting it in this big concrete system that would be really expensive and actually less effective, for a fraction of the cost, you could invest in your local green space, and it would deliver all of these multiple benefits, and it would cost less, be more functional, have a lower carbon footprint. And so that went then into placemaking. So it wasn't just about the SuDS system, it was about the paths and the lighting and the railings. And again, this really taps into all this research done at the university on placemaking. And then pulling in the community. And there's just all these lovely old photos on the system of all the lovely activities that happened. And one of my favourites is, there's one called Community Puddle. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but I just love it. I think we need another community puddle. I think we should make an annual community puddle. They look like they're having fun. And then this is what it's all about, really, isn't it? Really high quality green space that really brings people into contact with nature, gets them engaged in their local environment, gets them passionate about conservation as well, and preserving water quality and understanding habitat and wildlife, and just generally being out and having a nice time. And then it's continued, so there's actually been about 4 or 5 different SuDS schemes in Manor Fields Park over the years. So again, it's housing developers want to build something, and we're like, hey, you give us the money, we'll do something great with it. It'll do you SuDS, but it'll do so much more beyond that as well. So this is the pond to start with, and this is just the management plan for Manor Fields Park. So this gives you a flavour of the different kind of management levels. Again, really informed by people who did the landscape management qualification as well at the University of Sheffield. So for example, Peter, who's here today, who did that, and he's worked on this management plan. And then that new SuDS system. And then working with local people, again, doing the tall herbs, planting inula in the verges, and then getting the Green Flag Award. And then I'll zoom through. So Grey to Green has been a big project of ours. So again, the supply of the soils. So we manufacture recycled soils here. So those went into the Grey to Green. This is phase 2, but we did phase 1 as well. And then this was all planted and established during lockdown. So we supplied and installed all of that planting, 75,000 plants. And then doing the maintenance. So we've been doing the maintenance of phase 1 and phase 2 since their creation, with a little bit sometimes done by Amy for some things, but the vast majority is done by us. So this is the winter cutback, which is actually quite a skilled process. You need to know your plants, you need to know your different types of grasses, what gets cut back and how much. And then summer maintenance. Mostly just spot treatment of weeds or hand weeding. But again, you need to know your plants. We can't weed absolutely everything, so it's that intelligent thinking, where do I best put my energy? Which are the real weeds and which ones can I work with? So of course we've got loads of spontaneous plants and we like to work with these. We had Malva arborea in there, which I was quite excited about. I'm not sure what these guys thought of Malva, but we let it go and we let it flower and we'll see what that's doing. And then turf production. So a lot of this learning on seed mixes goes into then our meadow turf production, because as many of you will know, creating a meadow from seed directly on the ground is actually quite a challenging process. And I'll just, one little case study of a site just over the road in South Yorkshire Housing Association. So they had a grass area that was very rough, mostly fly tipped. So this is what it looked like after 2 years. And then we'll skip to 8 years. So this is currently what it kind of looks like at we're at 9 years today. So this is it early in spring with Primula coming up. So you've got all these different mixes of Primula. And then Primula Veris comes through a little bit later. And then you've got Papaver orientale with Valeriana officinalis. And then a bit later you've got the Lychnis chalcedonica and the giant knapweed. And then you've got all the late summer perennials coming through a bit later on. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. I was going to give you an overview of a few things, but I think I've got enough. I've said enough now. And I will pass on to who's next. Great.
So I'm using this.
You're using that, yeah. And I'll just zip through all of these. There you go. Oh, there you go. That was Mansfield. This is all I was going to say. So this is a few of the, one of the big projects that we've come to recently is Mansfield. So a lot of this learning on planting ecology and management is being put into practice in this huge SuDS system. So this is 225 rain gardens across Mansfield. And that's where it is. And there's our lovely team. Great.